your man Louie. Yeah.
And overtime.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to Monday Night Football Overtime. NFC North family business. Hey, you know how the family do it. If these two teams said they ain't did it, then they ain't did it. But if they did, well, that's NFC North family business. Packers at home taking on the Detroit Lions. That was a hell of a football game, and it seems like every game the Packers have played on primetime television has come down to the final moments. Remember, they were the opening game of the season Thursday night versus the Bears. It was a snooze fest, but it was a close football game. Obviously, there was a thriller on Thursday Night Football with the Eagles that came down to the final stages of that game. And then here, a game that ends in a walk-off field goal with amid a bunch of controversy. If you're a Lions fan, that's a tough way to lose. That's a bitter pill to swallow. I'm here for it, man. I'm going to open up the phone lines. If you're out there, I know my man LP might not join us tonight after that loss. I get it. I totally understand if he's not there tonight. But if you want to call in, if you're out there, man, I'm here for you to vent, bruh. That's a tough one to take. Especially the second one, I didn't agree with either one of the hands to the face penalties. Both of them looked like they were inside the chest plate, the pads. But the first one is the one that hurts the most because you were in clear control of this game. You're coming off of a sack that's going to force a Packers punt. With right around 8 minutes left in the game, you're up 9 at that point. You're going to get the football back with a chance to either run out the clock if you put together a semblance of a drive or eat up half of that 8-minute clock, reduce the amount of possessions. It's a 2-score game at that point. You're going to probably win the football game if you don't turn it over or give up a monster big play, okay? You were in the driver's seat is what I'm trying to say when that first hands to the face penalty took place that didn't take place, okay? That was called, I should say. So both of them were backbreaking. Both of them hurt you, but the first one to me is the one that kind of set this thing in motion because without it, there's no Allen Lazard touchdown to put the Packers within a field goal of winning this game. And there's no, 3 and out, Packers get the football back, drive down the length of the field and essentially eat up 6 minutes of the clock and walk off with a game-winning field goal. So all of it was set in motion by the first one. The second one pretty much ensured that you didn't get a chance to try to win the game yourself. That's what the second one did. The second one was the nail in the coffin, but really, you had this thing won if not for the first one. But either way, because I like my chances with Matthew Stafford late in the ball game, either one of those are backbreaking and you can't have them. Simply put, especially after the first one. After the first one, because we see guys' heads go back and you just assume, and that's what these officials do a lot of the times. I tell you about this on holding penalties all the time, that these officials assume that a holding penalty took place because a guy ends up on the ground. And you're like, dude, there was no holding on that play. They just assume. Just like in basketball, you get whistles, inverted whistles, and you get officials making calls before fouls actually take place because they're assuming that contact is coming. We see it with these NFL officials all the time. They assume a lot of things. And just because the left tackle, Bakhtiari's head is snapping back doesn't mean his head is being pushed backwards. And that's what they assume. They see hands anywhere in that region, head snap back, automatically it's got to be hands to the face, right? And generally it does mean that, but you got to actually see it taking place to make the call. And again, after the first one and you hear him complaining, you get a chance to look at it, you got to be able to tell yourself the second time around, I got to make sure I see it taking place before I throw the flag. Again, that's a bitter pill to swallow. And I said all of that to say this. While the officials didn't do you any favors, I equate this to a boxing match. I'm a massive boxing fan. You can't allow the fight to be in the hands of the judges by allowing it to go into the scorecards. You got to find a way to end the fight yourself. You think you're winning all of these rounds and you think you're dominating the fight, and then you come to find out that two judges have it scored in the favor of the other fighter, and you end up losing a fight you feel like you dominated, and you probably did, but you got a raw deal, don't allow the fight to go to the scorecards. In the case of the Detroit Lions, you dominated this football game. And you allowed this fight to go to the scorecards. Why? Because you didn't take care of business in the red zone. You settled for too many field goals. And, I'm not a big Booger McFarland fan, all right? But he kept saying all night long, and I didn't necessarily agree with it. I'm like, this isn't the Aaron Rodgers offense of 2015. They're not about to score 37 points tonight. Like, you can beat them kicking field goals, but at some point, you got to get in the end zone, though. I've always said, my mantra, my motto. Field goals don't win games. Touchdowns do. And you didn't follow directions tonight. You settled for field goal after field goal. I think Prater went 5 of 5 tonight. And at some point, you're going to pay for that. You got to cash in, and you got to make them pay. You got off to a hot start in this game. Stafford was piping hot, man. Hot, man. I mean, this score should have been 14 or 17 to nothing early in the ball game. With all the mistakes the Packers were making and all of the big plays you were hitting, this thing could have got, I said to myself quietly, man, this could be an ass whooping in the making. This could get ugly quick. And you allowed them to hang in by kicking field goals. Instead of this game being 14 to nothing or even 21 had you got really frisky. If you were feeling really frisky and nasty, this could have been 21 to nothing before they even blinked. Instead, it was 13 to nothing. And they got a chance to just hang in. Just hang in there. And they did. They scored a touchdown. They cut the deficit in half. And then next thing you know, they get a field goal. And now it's 13 to 10 at halftime. Instead of you dominating this game and feeling like you had something to show for it, they're hanging around and they're right there. And even with all the injuries, man, we're going to talk about that because Aaron Rodgers throwing to some bums, man. I don't want to discount some of these guys out there, but man, it was a rough night for Shepard. Boy, at one point I know Rodgers was like, just get his ass out of the damn game. There was a scramble late in the game on that 12-yard scramble that Rodgers had on that final drive where Shepard's wide open, and I bet you Rodgers saw it and saw him open and saw who it was and said, nah, I'm gonna just run for these 12 yards, man. I'm good. He might mess around, have the ball go through his hands off his face mask and then get picked the hell off. And get him the hell out of here. So, I mean, everything that could go wrong for the Packers, from an injury standpoint, from an execution standpoint, it did in this game. You got Aaron Jones with a fumble. Aaron Jones drops a touchdown pass. You got a muffed punt by Shepard. You got a drop pass off the face mask of Shepard that turns into an interception. At worst, the Packers were going to come away with at least a field goal attempt in that situation. That should have been a walk-in touchdown. He slips and falls. Everything that could go wrong. And then you lose Geronimo Allison, who, oh, by the way, had a drop on a third down. It was actually a good play by the Detroit Lion defender. Let me not call that a drop, but he leaves the game due to a concussion. MVS ended up leaving the game early in the first half. He did ultimately come back after halftime. They already were without their best receiver in Devontae Adams. It was rough for Aaron Rodgers, but he's found a way, man, and that's why he's a bad man. He's a bad man, and you found that out at the end of the game. You can't keep giving him chances. Now the officials helped out with those chances. Again, my deepest sympathies and apologies go out to the Detroit Lions because you didn't deserve that. You played too well to have the game be decided that way. But, as I mentioned with the analogy earlier, you left this up to the judges, and the judges swung this thing in the favor of the Green Bay Packers. And you can't do that. You got to go for the knockout. You got to go for the sure thing. You control that with these in your hands when you're a boxer. Don't allow the judges to tell you if you won the fight or not. You go out and make sure you win the fight and ensure that you come away with the victory. You had a chance to do that in the red zone, and you just failed to do it. But, again, that's nor here nor there. Bottom line is you got jobbed. You got jobbed. You deserve to win this football game, but you weren't able to come out with the victory. And that's frustrating. It really is. If I were a Lions fan, I would be pissed right now. So I totally get it. And I've been on the wrong side of some really bad calls that have affected my team. So I know what you're going through right now. But to go into Lambeau, to play as well as you did tonight, to play mistake-free football, you didn't have a turnover tonight. The Packers had 3. All right? The Packers had 3. In addition to all of the mistakes that I talked about, the drop touchdown. All right? Some big misses on third downs. I mean, there were some big plays that they missed in this game. And 3 turnovers. And yet you still don't find a way to win. That's tough and a bitter pill to swallow. So, wow. What a tough one. And you know what's crazy? When you look at the Lions' record right now, they could easily be 5-0. I mean, think about it. Week 1, they got the Arizona Cardinals dead to rights. They are destroying them in the second half of that game. You get a miraculous comeback aided by the Lions calling a timeout when they didn't need it, when Matthew Stafford was about to convert a third down that would have put the game on ice. They end up tying that game in overtime with the Arizona Cardinals, and you come out of there with a tie instead of a victory. Then you lose to the Chiefs before the bye week in a game that, again, you dominated that game. You had a fumble that goes for 101 yards the other way on a Bashad Breeland recovery after Kerryon Johnson is stretching for the goal line, is within inches of getting a touchdown, has the ball knocked out of his hands, and it goes the other way and goes for a touchdown. You allow Patrick Mahomes to scramble for 10 yards on 4th and 8 to keep the last-second desperation drive alive. They ultimately go down the field and win the football game. I mean, you could have won that game. And then tonight, to play as well as you did and see that thing slip through your fingers, that's a rough way to go. So instead of being 5-0, you're 2-1 on the season. And boy, is that bitter. I mean, that stings. It really does. As for tonight, Kenny Golladay was amazing early. Almost had another circus catch on the sidelines. He was outstanding in this football game. I thought that the run game would have more success. The Packers have been susceptible to the running game this season. We watched them give up some big gaping holes against the Philadelphia Eagles a couple weeks ago. I thought the Cowboys, because of the big deficit that they had to go away from the run, but I thought that that's why they were going to win the game. I thought the Cowboys were going to win because Ezekiel Elliott was going to have a massive day, but to the credit of the Packers, they were able to jump on the Cowboys early, and it took the run game out of the equation. But I thought you were going to be able to run. Dalvin Cook had a massive day against these Packers earlier in the season. I just thought you were going to be able to run the football more effectively tonight, and you just weren't. And I got to give the Packers defense credit there. They were able to stop the run, and they were able to run the football themselves. Jamal Williams over 100 yards rushing in his football game. So I was a little surprised by the inability of the Lions to have a consistent rushing attack. And that, I thought, took stuff, and it really put a lot of pressure on Stafford to try to convert plays. And they just didn't. Those hands to the face penalties where they called